Hey, yo, what's up, YouTube, man? It's your boy, Ashton Jackson, and in today's video, I'm going to be talking about the outlook of the Dallas Cowboys. We found out just a few hours ago that Al Harris left to go to the Chicago Bears to be the passing game coordinator over there for the Chicago Bears. So with Ben Johnson, so I'm proud of him. Proud he's going over somewhere where they're going to be a little bit more competitive. That's going to be a team that's going to be better than Dallas Cowboys. We do play the Chicago Bears next season, or this coming fall, so it is going to be a little intriguing to see that game as well. But I'm going to talk about the steps in which that we're going to find out how the Dallas Cowboys are going to be. We don't even know who our next head coach is going to be, and I'm making this video on Friday. I'm making this on January 24th on a Friday. So, we still don't know who our next head coach is going to be. More than likely, whoever, right now, I believe the Dallas Cowboys are finding the next head coach to see if they can bring on a guy like Jason Witten to the staff. And then I'm going to talk about free agency, the draft, contracts, some of our bigger contracts, and all that. So before we hop into the video, I would appreciate if you guys would like the video, subscribe if you're new, comment, and share my video with anyone who you think will enjoy my content. So Al Harris for getting his job in the passing game coordinator for the Chicago Bears. Hopefully that gets him a spot to either be a DC or a potential head coach the next time he wants to coach for a team. So the number one thing, since we're talking about coaching, is the Dallas Cowboys outlook does not look really good, of course, right? Teams and a lot of coaches are figuring out, and they're understanding that, there's not a lot of guys who really want to coach for the Dallas Cowboys. There's only two teams right now who have head coaching openings right now. That's the Dallas Cowboys. That's the New Orleans Saints. Once the New Orleans Saints find out who their next head coach is going to be, that will last leave the Dallas Cowboys. Who do I think is going to be the next Dallas Cowboys head coach? I think it's going to be Brian Schottenheimer. That's just the name that I've been seeing a lot. I don't see another person in play stepping in and taking the job, because Pete Carroll got the job in Vegas. So, again, now there's only two more teams. Mike McCarthy is still available. I will not be surprised if he possibly comes back and he is your head coach for the next, few years. I don't see that happening, but I wouldn't be shocked if it does happen, right? And then, also, with our next head coach, and if Jason Witten is on the staff for our next head coach, Jason Witten will be our head coach of the future. And that's something that is mind-boggling to me, because I just feel like the Dallas Cowboys should just clean it up. And not even clean it up. Just say, look, Jason Witten, be your head coach. Because there's no point in having, a lame duck head coach, have him in for, let's say you sign him to a 3-year deal. Next year is not going to be that great. I'm going to talk about a little bit as to why I don't think it will go, next season will look great, or the future years. But, if we're bringing on Jason Witten just to be whatever position coach or assistant head coach, and he's underneath while we have a new head coach like either Schottenheimer, or if we bring a guy like Mike McCarthy in, it makes no sense for us to say have a coach that we know we're going to replace with the guy that's already on staff. Why don't you just bring in Jason Witten and have him be the head coach if that's what the Dallas Cowboys' true plan is going to be? Why not just say, hey, screw it, Jason Witten be our head coach, and we'll just figure it out? That's where I am at in terms of the head coaching spot. I don't really care who the next head coach is, because I feel like things here won't change unless ownership changes, right? So, number one, whoever our next head coach is going to be, and if Jason Witten's on the staff, we know who our head coach of the future is going to be. Number two, free agency. That's a big part. If your free agency looks a lot like last year in terms of you let a lot of your own walk, you don't sign anybody to get better, and you just sign Micah Parsons to be your guy that you latch on to for the next, 4 or 5 years, however long his contract is. I believe it will be a 4-year deal. But if you bring him in and, you sign him to a contract, and you don't do anything in free agency, if you let Osa walk, I think your priorities will shift in terms of defensive tackle. I think that will, if we already were thinking about drafting that day 2, or getting it, doubling up in day 2 and day 3, I won't be surprised the Dallas Cowboys might want to make that a day 1 priority, where they want to pick the best defensive tackle available at 12 in a trade back situation, because they need to trade back to get more picks to add more players to this team. So if you let Osa walk, if you let Jay Lou walk, and you let Chauncey Golston walk, I think you're going to let your depth gets even worse from what it was last year, and it gets even worse this year. And now your draft priorities will shift. Now you will think about, okay, we got to draft defensive tackle in the first 2 days. Whether if we don't get one in the first round, if we don't get one if we don't really like one that we like in a trade back scenario day one in the draft, or if we select one day one, we might have to look at doubling up again either day two or sometime in day three, right? So I think your draft priorities will change if you don't do anything free agency. You let guys go, and the only person that you sign are like Brock Hoffman, TJ Bass. You sign some of your free agents like Wanye, Marquise Bell. You might resign Trey Lance, and then you just sign Micah, and that's all you do in free agency. Then it's going to look real bleak for the Dallas Cowboys, and your team is going to look even worse from last year. And I'm not even talking about the draft yet, right? And then also, if the Dallas Cowboys don't restructure Dak Prescott's deal, CeeDee Lamb's deal, and the bigger contracts that we have on our team, like Trayvon Diggs, or they might not even touch Trayvon Diggs' contract because they might try to get off of his contract to try and sign, DeRon Bland if they want to do that. I don't see them, doing it in that way, but I can see them possibly trying to draft a cornerback next year, then get rid of Trayvon Diggs. So we don't really know. But again, if they don't restructure contracts like Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, or, Terrence Steele to make room to sign their own, but then also if they don't add anything, that's okay, right? Because that's what I expect from Dallas Cowboys. They're not going to do much in free agency. But if you don't restructure Dak Prescott's deal or CeeDee Lamb's deal to get guys like Osa back or Jordan Lewis back, or if I had to pick between the two, I possibly would want to bring back Osa, let J. Lou walk. I know it's going to be tough, but having a defensive tackle that we developed over the years, and he's played a lot better in the second half of last year than he's ever done in the past few years as being a Dallas Cowboy. I don't think you let a developmental D tackle go and somebody that you developed. I'm not saying he's all world, but you need a defensive tackle, because if you let Osa walk, Mozzie Smith is the only eligible defensive tackle that's with that contract on the roster. So again, your need of drafting a defensive tackle gets even high, and that's another position that you have to think about drafting twice in the same draft, right? And then also, last but not least, the Dallas Cowboys have to have an impactful draft. If they have another lackluster or non-impactful year one draft from this draft, the season will look terrible, especially if you look at our opponents right here. Outside of your own division, you got the Arizona Cardinals. You play the NFC North, so that's the Packers, the Vikings, the Bears, the Lions. Then you got the AFC West, that's the Chargers, Chiefs, Broncos, Raiders. Then you got to play the Panthers, and then you got to play the New York Jets. So with those opponents coming up, I'm not saying all of them are world beaters, but most of the teams I just named are probably going to be better than you, or the only teams I see that you can possibly maybe sneak out a win against if you're healthy is the Giants, and depending on how better Washington gets, which I'll talk about our division opponents in a second. But if you don't really improve your roster, you have a lackluster draft, and you mess around with the next head coaching spot, and then you attach the next head coach with Jason Witten, you're doing another Bill Parcells, you're doing another Wade Phillips to Jason Garrett type of move, and I just think they'll be idiotic for us to do. But again, with the Dallas Cowboys and the way in which that we are ran, we do a lot of idiotic-like things. So I'm not going to put it past this front office for us to, example, hire Brian Schottenheimer, bring in Jason Witten, and then bring Shoddy for like a 3-year deal because we only have 4 years left of Dak Prescott. Let the seasons go the way they go, and hopefully that the Dallas Cowboys, thinking that they get a top pick to get a quarterback to potentially replace Dak Prescott, and then we'll just move on and the team will look completely different towards the end of Dak Prescott's tenure. But again, if the Dallas Cowboys do not have an impactful draft, and what I mean by an impactful draft, we have a bunch of needs on this team, right? Defensive tackle, wide receiver, corner, D-end, offensive tackles, tight end, wide receiver 2, running back 1 and 2, linebacker, especially with Marvin Overshown, going to miss some time. And if you let Eric Kendricks walk, Damone Clark, I know he's still under contract, but really he's going to get cut. I won't be surprised if he gets cut around training camp. And then safeties, we have to get better at as well. So I will not be shocked at all if the Dallas Cowboys don't have an impactful draft. You will be picking in the top 5 of next year's draft, right? And you will see a lot of, Cowboy fans with trash bags over their heads, and they'll be making signs like, oh, tank for Manning. So, the Dallas Cowboys outlook does not look, it looks very bleak. It doesn't look like there's a lot of promise moving forward. But really what can really shift the dynamic of this team is if the Dallas Cowboys have an impactful draft. I feel like the Dallas Cowboys are able to get an Ashton Genty or a really good running back, whether it's Trayvon Henderson out of Ohio State, or Caleb Johnson out of Iowa, or Amarian Hampton out of North Carolina, or again Genty out of Boise State. If they don't get somebody like that, or a really good defensive tackle like Deion Walker out of Kentucky, defensive tackle Derek Harmon, Tyleik Williams, Ohio State, Ken Grant, Michigan. Again, don't scout the helmet when you're looking at this film tape for Kenny Grant or Kenneth Grant, I'm sorry, or defensive tackle Mason Graham. Those were really good defensive tackles, but I know that's going to scare off a lot of Cowboy fans when you mention anything Michigan. But then also, you got to get another wide receiver to pair with CeeDee Lamb, because I don't think Jonathan Mingo, if that's their, hey, we traded a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo. We like Jalen Tolbert. We like Ryan Flournoy and Jalen Brooks. And then CeeDee Lamb's coming back next year. If that's what they think about the wide receiver room, it's going to look very lackluster as well. Our next head coach will really be determined on how good we're going to be next season. And if Jason Witten's part of the staff, it's going to be very tough. For agency, if we let guys go like Osa, Odighizuwa, Jordan Lewis, Chauncey Golson walk, now that second wave of your depth gets even more bleak, and it doesn't look better for your team. You'll be even worse from a depth perspective and talent perspective. And if the Dallas Cowboys don't restructure the bigger contracts on our team, like Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb's deals, Terrence Steele deals, to make room to either retain some of our own or try to replace guys that left in free agency with other dudes, just to make it just to balance out the roster. So that's why the team looks a little bit okay if guys don't pan out, draft picks don't pan out, right? And the Dallas Cowboys, really, their season, whether if we're a 5-win team or an 8 or 9-win team, depends on April and what we do in the draft, right? So again, that's about it for the video. Hope you guys have a nice day. Stay safe, stay blessed. Bye.